Been explained. He's using the language of the day. We are all justified, declared just before God, declared righteous before God. How? When we're not. We've just had 2.5 chapters to say that we're not. And now we're told that this righteousness from God has declared us righteous. We are justified freely by His grace through this redemption, through this buying us back, by our freedom now secured by Christ Jesus, through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. How? How has this happened? God, verse 25, presented Christ Jesus as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of His blood. Or the ESV rightly has it, God presented Christ as a propitiation through the shedding of His blood to be received by faith. Now, what does that mean? We need to pause for a moment and work through this word propitiation, or expiation some have, or sacrifice of atonement. Sacrifice of atonement isn't bad, it's just not quite focused enough. Let me unpack the terms. Propitiation is that sacrificial act by which God becomes propitious, which doesn't tell you very much, does it? Propitious simply means favorable. That is to say that propitiation is an act by which God becomes propitious. It's to say that it is an act by which God becomes favorable to us. He is set over against us in some sense in wrath, but now by this sacrificial act, he becomes favorable to us. It's propitiation. Expiation is the act by which sin is canceled. It's wiped out, taken off the board. So the object of expiation is sin. The object of propitiation is God. God becomes favorable. Now, in the pagan world of the first century, when pagans offered sacrifices to their gods, very often it was in a desire to make them propitious, favorable. So you want to make a sea voyage, then you offer a propitiating sacrifice to Neptune, the god of the sea, in the hope that he won't be bad-tempered or angry with you, and then you'll have a safe sea voyage. It was a sacrifice to Neptune to make him propitious. It was a propitiating sacrifice. But this text says something rather astonishing. You see, in that old pagan way of looking at things, I, the worshiper, offer a propitiating sacrifice to the gods. But this text says, God presented Christ as a propitiating sacrifice. So, does that mean that God, presenting Christ as a propitiating sacrifice, propitiates God? How can God offer a sacrifice that propitiates Himself? Now, partly because of that, there have been all kinds of thinkers who have really rejected this interpretation entirely. They think it's silly, it doesn't make any sense. How can God propitiate Himself? Besides, some of them just don't like the notion of blood sacrifice or God being wrathful. There was a very influential professor in the United Kingdom in the 1930s by the name of C.H. Dodd, who argued very strongly that this doesn't make any sense. God can't propitiate Himself, therefore this must be expiation. This is not God propitiating God, turning away God's wrath. How can God propitiate God? He said, after all, God so loved the world that He gave His Son. If He's already so favorable to the world that He gave His Son, how can you imagine that the Son is then propitiating God? He's already favorable. So He mustn't be propitiating Himself. He must be coming along to offer His Son to expiate, to cancel sin. There were a number of responses by people in this country and Australia and Britain. And what they pointed out was in the Old Testament, when propitiation is mentioned, it is regularly in the context of the wrath of God. The word rendered propitiation here, 2/3 of the time, is actually the word used for the top of the Ark of the Covenant on the Day of Atonement, where the blood of the bull and goat was shed precisely to turn away God's wrath. God ordained that this sacrifice be offered to turn away God's wrath. That's the context in which it's mostly used in the Old Testament. And in this passage itself, we've just had 2.5 chapters that begin, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all the wickedness that we human beings have deployed in suppressing the truth. So the wrath of God is there. It's personal, it's deep, it's unavoidable. And there is a sense in which that wrath must be set aside. But how can God propitiate himself? And the answer, of course, is that God stands over against us in wrath because of his holiness. He does. If he does not stand over against us in wrath, then he's immoral. Oh, I don't care. They can blaspheme and they can kill and rape and they can steal and lie. No sweat. I don't care. No skin off my nose. God is righteous, and he does stand over against us in wrath, especially because we have marginalized him. We have de-godded him. God knows that it is for our good that he be at the center of absolutely everything. It's not simply that he wants to have a certain kind of preference among peers. When you and I want to be especially praised by our peers, we want to be stronger than they are, to have a leg up, to be discerned as superior. But God is superior. He's not just us. He is God. We're the image of God. More than that, God knows in love that we must see him at the center of everything, or we are lost and undone. It is for our good. It is out of love that God insists that it be so. And so he is angry when by our actions and thoughts and deeds we declare it will not be so. God does stand over against us in wrath because of his holiness. But he stands over against us in love because that's the kind of God he is. And this text says that God presented Christ Jesus to be the propitiation for our sins. Now, in fact, you can't have propitiation, that is the turning aside of the wrath of God, without expiation, the canceling of sin. The two hang together in the Bible. And even in the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement, that was so, which is why some people have preferred the more embracing sacrifice of atonement. God set forth Christ to be the sacrifice of atonement for our sins, canceling our sin and turning aside the wrath of God. What you must not lose from it in the context of Romans is the wrath of God. The word propitiation is the more focused.